This is Teachers Talk Radio, and you are listening live.
Hello, everybody. Here we are, a bit late, yet very energetic to be talking about the IELTS. IELTS has been a fathomless mystery for many years, but let's talk about it a little bit to see if we can shed some light on it.
This is Teachers Talk Radio, and you are listening live. Tune in live at ttradio.org, or to join in the conversation, download the Podbean app and search Teachers Talk Radio. Follow the hashtag TTRadio. Tune in, talk it out with Teachers Talk Radio.
Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining us. Here we are with a new show on a great topic, and I hope that we exchange a lot of ideas, we'll learn a lot. I believe this show in particular can be beneficial for teachers and even students, because I believe to a very good extent IELTS is right now something that you cannot easily ignore. It is a very important test that as a person who wants to study, I don't know, in North America, if you want to study in Europe, in one way or another, you are dealing with this test. And this test has been very important. You cannot go study in North American universities and Europe unless you have the IELTS and the acceptable band score, and without which you should totally forget about studying abroad in North American universities in Europe. So it is still a big deal for non-native, English learners and teachers, and also English learners, because it can be an uphill battle, because the test, despite being very natural and thorough, has its own ambiguity. And a lot of teachers, a lot of students may not know exactly what they gotta do. It is, of course, obvious to take the test and get a good band score. You gotta study really hard, and you gotta be a competent or an advanced user of the language. Yet sometimes even competent users, like very good users of the language, find it too difficult to get what they want to get out of the test and then pursue their dreams and further their studies. Again, bear that in mind. It is not something that you can easily forget about. IELTS can and sometimes is, can be and sometimes is a big obstacle in your way to achieve what you want to achieve as a student who lives in, I don't know, the Middle East, Asia, South America, etc., etc. Good. First off, I believe to understand the IELTS, they gotta be talking about like how it is and what band scores there are. Easily put, you are, as a test taker, supposed to take the test, which comes in four skills: writing, speaking, listening, and reading. And then at each skill, you will be given a band score from 0 to 9. 0 meaning you did not even take part in the test, and 9 means you just did a great job and you aced the test. Of course, 9 out of 9 is to a very good extent uh, nearly impossible, because, for example, when it comes to writing, you should write I believe to a very good extent, exceptionally, because not there are not many test takers who have managed to get it done, and to me, that's kind of like I believe I believe that's kind of impossible to teach someone and then help them to get a 9 in writing. In speaking, the story is a little different. Yet when it comes to speaking, listening, again, we have 0 to 9, 9 being perfect, very good, and 0 being very bad. I mean, not taking part in the test, but 1, 2, 3, 4 not being really good. So that is what the IELTS is, and it is an English test that you might be dealing with. As teachers, you might have candidates who want to take the test, and as uh, an English learner, you might be studying for the test. So, to understand like what the IELTS and how this is, like how IELTS assesses your performance, I believe it can be of tremendous help just to check out like what these numbers exactly mean. So when I say someone got a 7 in writing, I believe it's important to talk about what it exactly means. So to understand that, I believe we gotta go and talk about the common European framework of reference. It is not like a standard that is called CFR, and it tells you exactly, not that exactly, by the way, not that precisely, but it does its best to tell you what your level as an English learner is. For example, if you are a basic user, your level is like A1 or A2, and if you're a good user and you're doing a little better, then your beta score is gonna be like B1 and B2. For B1 and B2, you are roughly like you're kind of an independent user. I mean, you can do like many things using the language. You can talk, you can interact with people, and to a very good extent, you can make yourself understood and express yourself almost skillfully. And then we have C1 and C2. So C1 is where you're quote unquote called advanced, meaning you can easily manage to interact with people and talk about different topics with both spontaneity and flexibility. And above that, we have C2 with the profession level. And in that level, you are speaking as well as a native speaker does. You can talk about a wide range of topics. You are like very skillful when it comes to usage of the language, even about like tricky topics and sensitive topics, and you can do it almost error freely. So I believe that is just a good start to understand what the whole idea of the IELTS is. But if we are to take like more steps to get to grips with the whole thing and try to understand what that is, I believe it's not that bad to talk about like what exactly C1 is. When we say a learner is advanced, what does that even mean? Does it have anything to do with vocabulary, or does that have anything to do with like how accurately the candidate speaks? Is it about grammar? Is it about vocabulary? Does that anything to do with the pronunciation, etc., etc.? But if you check out a few websites and if you check out CFR, you'll see that there are some can-do statements. I believe they are not that thorough and comprehensive, to be honest. Yet I believe this is all you got. So let's see what that is. For example, when it comes to speaking, uh, the can-do statement for C1 level suggests that the candidate can express themselves fluently and spontaneously without much obvious searching for expressions. So in this very case, the candidate, can speak with spontaneity. So the learner can talk easily and is not under a lot of pressure, and the whole talk is very smooth, meaning that's very fluent. And then when it comes to For example, like sentences and how good the sentences are and the language is, the learner has a good command of a broad range of language, allowing themselves to express themselves clearly and appropriately. So as you can see, when it comes to C1, the advanced level, does not easily suggest that you should use this grammar, you should use those words, and you should have like this level of pronunciation and accuracy. In fact, what C1 does, C1, the definition for C1 is almost as vague as what the definition of C2. But altogether, the level C1 suggests that the learner is a very good user, and there is a spontaneity in his or her speech. There is flexibility. The learner can talk and interact fluently and fluidly and smoothly. The learner is not under a lot of pressure talking. The learner's sentences are to a very good extent accurate. And if there are mistakes, first, they are very few. Second, they do not hinder. They do not hinder the flow of conversation. So this is helpful. As I told you before, it's not as comprehensive and comprehensible as you want it, but it can also help us in a way that we understand that uh, using a bunch of advanced words won't necessarily make you an advanced user. So if you are using big words, fancy words, and hoping that you might be perceived as advanced, apparently, it is palpably wrong. So people on the internet who simply recommend using very big fancy words uh, are either not are either blatant liars or they have no idea what they're talking about. Because if you check this out, we do not have like really big fancy words. We have, for example, candidate can consistently maintain a high level of grammatical accuracy, but we do not have very sophisticated, crazy sentences that the candidate ought to use. We also do not have something like the candidate should do this and should use a bunch of idioms. There's nothing like that. Indeed, in return, the candidate can interact skillfully by selecting a suitable phrase from a range of discourse in order to contribute appropriately. As you see, that has nothing to do with that. That's the reason I believe a lot of learners find the test off-putting, and they might also think the test is unfair. I do not think so, honestly. I believe it's not. It's not unfair. I believe more often than not, test takers get what they deserve. And I have heard a lot people say, "Oh, I used many good words and complex sentences, but my beta score wasn't what I wanted." My answer is simple. I say, "Okay, cool. I mean, good words are, of course, helpful. Complex sentences, yeah, that's what native speakers or advanced users do. That's really good. Yet that's not what you only need. No, advanced grammar, sophisticated words per se cannot signify the fact and suggest that you're an advanced user, because you got to use them skillfully and you got to show that you know these words in a way that you can use them in the right context, with the right intonation, with the right meaning. Knowing a word merely, I believe, won't come in that handy, because it's super simple. You can easily memorize a bunch of words, and then you can easily use them. So that's not what apparently the test takers should do. So more often than not, I believe that that's the case. And and again, there's also one more thing. A lot of test takers simply think that uh, it is too easy to go from band score 6 to band score 7. And they might find that, oh, that is just only a band score. It's not that big of a deal. It is easy to pull that off, which is in practice wrong. No, it takes a lot of time. Cambridge apparently presents something that's called the CFR table and guided learning hours. They believe if a candidate, for example, is B2, like upper intermediate or something, or intermediate, this candidate approximately needs 700 I'm sorry, 300 to like 400 hours of guided learning to reach C1. So I hope you're noticing that there is a huge gap, and the gap is like really huge because in order to go from B1 to B2, you do not have this like many hours to cover. But from B2 to C1, you have a lot of work to do, and that shows from 5 to 6. When we're talking about the IELTS, from 5 to 6, it's not that big of a deal. It is a big deal still, don't get me wrong. That's of course a problem, but it is to a very good extent surmountable. Like 200 hours can help you out, get it done. But from 6 to 7, you need 300 hours of guided learning, which is like, any way you slice it, it's no easy at all. So hoping and thinking and assuming that I can study for a good 2 months and then get it done, is not just bad. It is just a palpably wrong plan, which can be off-putting, and it's going to be to a very good extent distressing and disappointing. So what do I mean by that? I believe we should know exactly about like the how the exam works, because a friend of mine told me that if you want to be working as an examiner, like you if you want to become an examiner, apart from of course the qualifications and like certificates, you need to have relevant experience. To me that means they only hire teachers, and that means you cannot fool the examiner as an English learner, as a candidate. You can't do it. You can memorize a bunch of collocations and a bunch of fancy grammar structures to show off in your English class, but the same thing can't be said about the test, the real test with the examiner, because the examiner indeed has at least 3 years of teaching experience. So the examiners are teachers. And that's why, when it comes to the IELTS examiner's code of practice, test takers are not allowed, they are not allowed to advertise their examiner status for the purposes of teaching or publishing. Okay, so IELTS says you can't do it. If you're an examiner, you do not need to, and you shouldn't say that you're an examiner. So that's why I believe if you are to just take a test and get a band score 7 or above, I believe you gotta be a very good user. So why not invest the time and work hard and become a great English user? And as a teacher, I believe my responsibility is to first debunk the wrong ideas. I believe that's a great thing. And I was listening to a colleague, Pauline Colin, talk about the IELTS and like how bad the information is on the internet and how misleading it is. And I believe she's right. I was just checking this out, and there's some YouTube videos, like 10 words to use when you're taking the test in the speaking module to guarantee band score 8. I believe no word, no collocation can easily guarantee a band score unless you are a good user, a very good user of the language. Yes, so use a bunch of collocations or use fancy good grammar to just help you out, get the band score you wanted. But without the basics, without the knowledge, I believe that is impossible. So I believe that's my personal opinion. Don't quote me on that, but from my own experience, I believe IELTS, by and large, is a placement test. That's what I think. One might say, no, that's not very precise, but I've learned the hard way that it is a placement test. Let me explain. I believe examiners cannot stay focused for roughly 14-15 minutes and listen very meticulously to the candidates and then put down the words, write them all down, and then decide what band score the examiner, the candidate can get. I believe it is so far fetched. I know we have band descriptors, don't get me wrong, I'm going to get to that. Yet I believe it is still a placement test. Yes, we have the band descriptors, and if you go and check out the band descriptors for example, a candidate that wanna get, let's say, a band score 7, it goes like this. It reads like this: the candidate is able to keep going and readily produce long turns without noticeable effort. Some hesitation, repetition, or an self-correction may occur, often mid-sentence and indicate problems with accessing appropriate language. However, these will not affect coherence, flexible use of spoken discourse markers, connectives, and cohesive features. I swear to God, this is not something that you can just bear in mind. This is something you learn and then you play it by ear. You know that this band score is suitable for this candidate because this candidate is a C2 learner and this candidate deserves an 8 or 8.5 or a 9. I like just check out the vocabulary. Like, look, I mean, the band descriptors, by the way, right now are like renewed, and they are renewed. I believe it happened in May, if I'm not mistaken. And right now we don't have public version, examiner version. We used to have the two versions, but we do not have two versions anymore. There's just one version, everybody, just one version, which is great. I mean, thank you, IELTS, finally. But it is, I believe, really helpful, of course. But come on, it is still vague. Let's check out the vocabulary. Yeah, let's check out the vocabulary. A range of structures flexibly used. Error-free sentences are frequent. And I'm sorry, I believe I was reading about the grammar part, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah. Resource flexibility used to discuss a variety of topics. Some ability to use less common and idiomatic items. And an awareness of a style and collocation is evident, though inappropriacies occur. Effective use of paraphrase as required. I believe it is too clear, obvious that the examiner is doing it, I believe, in a way. First, I believe the examiner, when it comes to speaking, the examiner just thinks of the level of the candidate and then decide, okay, this candidate is B2, so probably it got to get this, for example, band score. I believe that's how it takes place. And that's why I believe it is not a weakness from my point of view. I believe it is why candidates almost always get what they deserve. They don't get what they don't deserve because the examiner is just meticulously listening to them to decide how good or how bad they are instead of counting the good words, the collocations, grammar mistakes, etc., etc. So that's what I think. But let's go for the news, and afterwards we are going to pick up where we are going to leave off. Let's go for the news.
This show is brought to you in partnership with John Catt Educational, publishing professional development books and resources to support great teaching and learning in schools around the world. Have you checked out their latest releases? Use the code JCTTR2324 for 20% off your order. Don't miss out. Visit johncatbookshop.com to explore their full range of titles and advance your own professional development today. Happy reading.
In today's educational environment, students and teachers are juggling a mix of face-to-face, online and blended learning courses. Canvas by Instructure helps teachers navigate these diverse learning experiences with a user-friendly virtual learning environment that offers flexible access to courses and a consistent learning experience, all while streamlining everyday teaching processes. The world's best schools and universities are using Canvas to create dynamic courses, collaborate seamlessly, and access actionable data that drives student success.
On the 24th to the 26th of January 2024, Bet UK is back, and even better for educators. New for 2024, Table Talks empowers educators to collaborate openly and connect deeply with like-minded individuals in the education space, as well as tech user labs, the brilliant new tutorials and working groups at BET, where technology users will learn how to get more out of their institution's tech from the top education technology experts in the world. Whatever your goal, you'll find it at BET 2024. Educators go free. Get your tickets today at www.uk.betshow.com/visitor-registration.
This is Teachers Talk Radio, and this is Teachers Talk Radio News.
School summer holidays are often a hot topic, but they made the news again in The Guardian as leaders in Wales appear to be considering changes. According to reports, Wales's Minority Labour Administration wants to shrink summer breaks from 6 weeks to 5 and eventually reduce it to 4 weeks. The plan would see the time added to half-term breaks in October and May. The proposal would equalise the length of terms and break the connection with Easter by fixing the timing of the spring break regardless of when the religious festival falls. The newspaper says the plans follow research by the government which suggests that parents struggle to organise and pay for childcare over the summer. Plaid Cymru, which supports the proposal, said in a statement that the current calendar was outdated as it was designed a long time ago, and that some families find the summer break very long and impacting negatively on their well-being. However, the article also points out that evidence of the harm to learning from school holidays is unclear, as much of the evidence comes from the United States, where summer holidays can be up to 12 weeks long rather than the 6 to 7 weeks in the UK. John Hattie, Professor of Education at the University of Melbourne, said the effects from school holidays are very small, and there is little reason to believe that the length of the school year has much effect at all. A study from 2019 that looked at pupils from primary schools in an area of high deprivation in Scotland and England found no effect on reading skills. In Northern Ireland, schools typically have 8 weeks off in the summer, but generally have results in exams that are better than those in England or Wales. However, a 2022 study did find evidence of worsening mental health in some age groups over long summer breaks. Surveys done in Wales found 60% of parents said they were quite happy with the school year as it is. In 2013, then Education Secretary Michael Gove gave schools in England the power to choose the timing of holidays, but most schools kept the 6 weeks. The BBC News website reports on the Beyond Ofsted inquiry. The inquiry is chaired by former Schools Minister Lord Knight and is funded by the National Education Union. The report from the inquiry recommends that schools should instead be responsible for their own improvement plans. Ofsted has responded by repeating its previous statement that inspections are needed to ensure a high-quality education. The inquiry said that Ofsted was now seen by many as toxic and not fit for purpose, and in need of major reform. The removal of single-word judgments was also recommended, and this echoed another report on school improvement released earlier by the Institute for Public Policy Research, which also called for narrative-style judgments rather than single words. The Beyond Ofsted inquiry recommended stopping Ofsted from having direct contact with schools, and instead schools should draw up their own improvement plans, which would make them accountable to parents and the wider local community. Lord Knight, speaking to the BBC, said Ofsted created a culture of fear in our schools. His report also said that Ofsted had become under-resourced for the high-stakes job expected of it. A spokesperson for Ofsted said 9 out of 10 schools say inspections helped them to improve. In related news, the current Chief Inspector of Schools, Amanda Spielman, has written in her final annual report about parents being increasingly willing to challenge school rules in England. She described the unwritten contract between home and school as fractured and that it will take time to repair. The report is broadly positive, but draws attention to a shift in behaviour, attendance and attitudes to education since the pandemic, describing it as leaving a troublesome legacy. Full details of her comments can be found across media outlets. Teach First has celebrated its 20th anniversary, with 3 former Prime Ministers praising the charity's work in tackling education inequalities. According to Teach First's own website newsfeed, the charity has recruited more than 16,000 teachers to work in disadvantaged areas across England. Teach First CEO Russell Horby reaffirmed the charity's mission to help Britain's most disadvantaged children to achieve their full potential. Finally, student immigration data has been released, with Home Secretary James Cleverly stating the biggest drivers of immigration to the UK are students and healthcare workers. He further commented that this was testament to our world-leading university sector. According to data, Indian nationals account for over 1/4 of all sponsored study grants, followed by Chinese nationals. The education sector relies heavily on students applying to UK universities for significant funding, but there is also political pressure to reduce net immigration. Any plans to make changes to the current system will be monitored carefully, although for now the focus remains on illegal migration rather than legal routes. This has been your Teachers Talk Radio News with Joe Fox.
Great. This is Teachers Talk Radio, everybody, and you're listening to the episode that I love. We're talking about the IELTS. We're talking about how we can understand how the IELTS works. And as I was telling you, I believe to a very good extent, IELTS is fair and it can get you, like, it can what you get, I believe, to a very good extent, is what you deserve. So, but this show, I believe we'd better first talk about speaking. More often than not, learners are like disgruntled. They take this important test and then they feel what they got was not what they deserved, and the result is to a very good extent disconcerting. So there are 4 criteria. This is what we know. And the criteria are first fluency and coherence, and then we have lexical resource, and then we have grammatical range and accuracy, and then pronunciation. So these are the criteria, and that's how your performance is going to be assessed. So when it comes to fluency and coherence, bear that in mind, that we're not talking about the speed of your talk, the speed of your performance. We're never talking about the speed. We're just talking about first and foremost, if the answers are of an appropriate length, are they too short? Do you manage to expand on your ideas? Do you manage to express yourself in a way that is comprehensible? And at the same time, do you speak too slowly? Do you hesitate all the time? Do you repeat, or do you make a lot of corrections? Like, how does that happen? And then uh, it is also important, like, how the speaker uses a range of cohesive devices and discourse markers. So fluency and coherence, in short, is all about like how appropriate the length of your answer is. If you're speaking too slowly, if you're too hesitant, because a lot of people say something and then they think about it, and then they change it, and then they repeat, and then they change it and they repeat, they correct themselves, and the whole answer, to a very good extent, is incomprehensible. And then last but not least, like how skillfully you use a range of cohesive devices that can help you out express what you want to express even better. So that's the fluency and coherence. So it has literally nothing to do with speaking too fast. So you should not be proud of yourself if you're speaking too fast. You cannot simply hope, okay, I am going to speak too fast, and then as a result, I am no, the examiner is not going to notice my mistakes. Bear that in mind. The examiner is a teacher, so the examiner is really good at noticing what you're hiding. Okay, and if you ask me what you got to do as a teacher, as a learner, to do well in this particular criterion, I believe what you got to do first is to teach your candidates uh, first to expand on their answers. I believe there's no strategy better than asking them all the time why. And then more often than not, learners will have this tendency to ask themselves why. It may have a lot to do with their culture. Remember, a lot of learners are very reticent. I believe learners from, like, for example, Japan do not tend to speak at length. In many cultures, it is disrespectful to talk at length. You are indeed supposed to respond to the questions you're asked as concisely as possible. But the same thing cannot be said about the test, because the test wants you to speak at length and express yourself to the best of your ability, and then make yourself understood. So, as a teacher, I believe your number one responsibility is to first help them get rid of their, I don't know, inhibitions and things they hold dear that cannot help them during a test, like speaking too concisely or believing that the shorter their answer, the better. And then afterwards, you can teach them to talk about, I don't know, reasons. You can talk about the past. You can talk about the future, so that their answer is long enough. And then on top of that, they won't have to repeat themselves. And they can, of course, to connect it all, they can use a range of cohesive devices skillfully and get the result they wanted. And then afterwards, we go for lexical resource. I believe uh, we have like too many myths here, like too many. And for example, there are a lot of advanced words that I believe you should never study unless you are a vocabulary aficionado. If that's what you take delight in, you're more than welcome to do it all. But this can not be something that a candidate who's willing to get 6 or 7 speaking should do, because that can honestly wreak havoc with the whole system. It's going to be a mayhem. I mean, you're going to learn a lot of words, and your knowledge is going to be very rudimentary, and you're going to use them wrongly, you're going to use them badly, and then the result is just catastrophic. And this indeed can first affect the students' confidence adversely, and then the candidate might think, oh my god, I'm not good enough, so I should go and learn even more advanced words to pull this off, which is palpably wrong. And people who advocate this are honestly, as I told you before, either blatant liars or they are so unaware of what they're doing. Okay, let's talk about vocabulary. So, for example, if I ask you as an examiner to tell me about what you do for fun, when you say, I hang out with my friends, or I go out, I go walking, swimming, that's great. That shows that you can use a range of vocabulary which is pertinent and related to the topic, and this is not just some random words. That shows that, oh yeah, you can use the language to your own advantage. It is indeed a great thing. So you shouldn't use big words and then hope, since you have used them, you can easily you can easily be granted a great band score. So the examiner might ask himself if the speaker uses a range of vocabulary, like everyday vocabulary, less common vocabulary, colloquial expressions. But I told you, less common does not mean uncommon. And unless you want to get a 8 or 9, I believe you shouldn't be using very difficult words. And then also, the examiner also checks if the speaker uses the vocabulary appropriately. I told you this appropriacy rule is really important, and it can easily like it can be like against your interests, because you use an advanced word, but you don't use it in the right place with the right intonation, and then that is going to work against you. That is going to cost you ban a score instead of helping you out. And these are the questions that normally the examiner might ask themselves. So, and then afterwards, we have the grammatical range and accuracy. Honestly speaking, when it comes to vocabulary, I say everybody, please do not use idioms. Yeah, I know we have like idiomatic language, but honestly, please forget about it. You don't have to use idioms. Indeed, you are already using a variety of idioms that you aren't aware of. So forget about it. Because more often than not, when candidates want to use idioms, they use it in a way that just simply signifies the fact that they have recently learned the idiom. They don't know how to use the idiom properly and correctly, and they're just using the idiom just to use them, just for the sake of it, uh, which is no good. When it comes to grammar and accuracy, what I ask my students and what I suggest them, honestly, which I believe this is like, it's not a rule, honestly speaking. I can tell you it is written somewhere. Again, I've learned that the hard way. So when it comes to grammar, do not use too fancy grammar, let's say. Don't use uh, like inversion necessarily. Inversion can first make you make mistakes, and when you make mistakes, you just lose your attention. You just lose your focus, and then when you've lost your focus, it's too hard to regain it. So forget about inversion, forget about sophisticated grammar. I do not recommend using, for example, like words like third conditional, unless you are fully aware of how it works and you know how it works and you can use it skillfully. So forget sophisticated grammar. Just please make sure that you can use simple grammatical forms with control. That's what you got to be good at. When you have difficulty making your sentences work, I mean, why on earth do you think you can use advanced grammar when you are hard pressed using, for example, a sentence in which there is subject verb agreement? When you are no good at that, why would you? I believe I can't honestly wrap my head around it. Why you think you need to use like a very advanced, complicated piece of grammar and then hope that you're going to get a great band score, which I believe is impossible. And on top of that, you should be able to use complex structures. And complex doesn't mean complicated. I believe it is worth mentioning a few times. Like, you don't have to use complicated grammar. Complicated and complex are two separate things. Like, I mean, complex sentences are one thing, and then complicated grammar is quite another. When it comes to complex sentences, the word that can easily turn your sentence into a complex sentence, like easily, instantaneously. And I believe people who can use that properly and correctly are good users. Basic learners and elementary learners can't use the word that properly and correctly. More often than not, they make mistakes using this. So why not go with that? Why not make sure that your sentences are simple but accurate? And I believe that is at least more important than using big, complicated grammar. And then, last but not least necessarily, we have pronunciation. And a lot of people might worry about, like, my accent is good or bad. My accent is, for example, British or American or something of such. None of this is important. Honestly, none of this is important. So forget about accent, but please make sure that people can understand what you're saying. Like, accent is not a problem unless it is too thick and heavy that doesn't let people understand what you're saying. In that case, of course, it is a big problem, and you gotta find a way to surmount this problem. But if you're understood, forget about it. And that's it. By the way, you also gotta make sure that your sentences. I mean, I'm talking about the stress pattern. Like, the examiner might and will indeed pay attention to the fact that if the speaker uses word stress and sentence stress correctly, because that also shows how good you are at using the language. And then we have the speaker's intonation, uh, and whether or not it is appropriate. Because when you finish, for example, your sentence, you got to go with the falling tone, no, with the rising one, because the rising tone lets us know that you want to continue. But if you don't want to continue, then why do you go up? Instead, you got to go, just, the tone and the tonality gotta be falling. So again, the big question: how we can, as teachers, help our students get a great Banner score or get a good Banner score. I believe our number one responsibility is to help them be good or very good English users. If they can use the language appropriately, if they can use the language to their advantage, and they can use it with flexibility, and they can produce sentences with the spontaneity, and they can do it effortlessly, I believe you have killed two stones. You have killed two birds with one stone, because first, they are able to use the language skillfully. So that's a great achievement. It's no mean feat. Second, they can ace the test. Of course, I'm not against being test wise. Of course, you got to learn how this test works. But I'm just saying you should not make a fuss over like knowing about the test. Oh, I got to know the test. And once I know about the test, everything is over. No, you need to be test wise at the same time. You got to be a very good user of the language. I believe that is just of tremendous importance. And for candidates who are listening to me, I gotta say, if you want to get a great Banner score, be a great user, be a great learner. Try to learn words and grammar and learn to talk and interact with people. Watch as many movies as possible. Listen to as many podcasts as possible. And then, little by little, you can be a competent user, a very good user. So that's it. I mean, you just achieved what you wanted to achieve, right? Yeah, that's, I believe, what uh, we as teachers help uh, candidates uh, first accept, and then I believe imply, and then apply their best to get what they want to get. So yeah, I'm gonna be talking about a new thing. I'm gonna be talking about like what you should do, and like if I am to give you a practical piece of advice, one by which you can make a wise decision and then bring about what you want to bring about, I believe I need to tell you that practice, in this very case, makes progress and improvement. So practice, practice, practice. I believe that is of tremendous importance, beyond and without a doubt.
Are you looking for lesson planning materials to kickstart the new term? We've got you covered. The Day is a global online resource that turns the news into lessons. We're offering listeners a free resource on Andrew Tate that you can find on thedaynews.co/Tate. Inspire personal development and critical thinking for your students by downloading the Tate Debate today and feel more confident addressing sensitive topics with your class. Visit thedaynews.co/Tate to find out more.
This show is brought to you in partnership with John Catt Educational, publishing professional development books and resources to support great teaching and learning in schools around the world. Have you checked out their latest releases? Use the code JCTTR2324 for 20% off your order. Don't miss out. Visit johncattbookshop.com to explore their full range of titles and advance your own professional development today. Happy reading.
In today's educational environment, students and teachers are juggling a mix of face-to-face, online and blended learning courses. Canvas by Instructure helps teachers navigate these diverse learning experiences with a user-friendly virtual learning environment that offers flexible access to courses and a consistent learning experience, all while streamlining everyday teaching processes. The world's best schools and universities are using Canvas to create dynamic courses, collaborate seamlessly, and access actionable data that drives student success.
All right, you're listening to Teachers Talk Radio, everybody. So, as I was saying, I believe practice makes progress and practice makes improvement. Uh, and as an English learner, as a candidate, you're not alone. I believe there are plenty of teachers who can help you out. I believe that has a lot to do with the sitcom Friends. In one scene in particular, I believe Rachel, who has like no idea what the real world looks like, and she's very spoiled. And then Monica and others are trying to support her after helping her decide that she wants to live in this real world in which you got to work, you got to pay your own bills, you got to work really hard, you have to pursue a career. Monica gives Rachel a great piece of advice. Not a piece of advice, but something that I believe can make a lot of sense when we think about the IELTS. Monica says, "Welcome to the real world. It sucks, but you're going to love it." I believe the same thing can be said about the IELTS. Welcome to the IELTS world. It sucks, but you're going to love it. I believe preparation for this high-stakes test can teach us a lot. It is, to a very good extent, a marathon in which you got to make sure that you are a very good user of a language. And by memorizing a bunch of words and sentences, you can never pull this off. But there are many techniques that I believe we can all employ to teach our learners. I believe among which teaching them, like if you want to answer a question, always make sure that your answers are developed. Always make sure that your answer is a good one. And by a good and a developed answer, I mean when you're talking about a topic and you're expressing your idea, You should talk about the reasons why you think the way you think. I believe it goes without saying in many cultures, but in some cultures, you're not that much welcome to speak at length. So reasons are important. Talk about reasons. You can also talk about the effects of making that decisions or failing to make that decisions. Why not talk about the effects? Why not talk about them? And also, why not make comparisons? If you think this, for example, a strategy in particular can come in handy and it can be very beneficial, why not compare this strategy with something that you think cannot be as helpful? And by comparison, you can easily accentuate how the strategy you are proposing and you are advocating can be more helpful. And then you can also use supporting examples. Like examples first can help your audience fully grasp the idea and also make sure that you're on the same page. Like giving examples can be really good. And a lot of people also go with personal experiences, and that can also be really handy. Why not talk about it? If you are to talk about, for example, traffic and or timekeeping skills or something of such, why not talk about your own personal experience, and then by means of which you can easily uh, like consolidate your answer in a way that your audience can understand it completely and comprehend it all. Why not do that? And many other things can also be said. I love teaching signposting because I believe it is tremendously helpful. And by signposting, I mean like some, let's say, chunks that can help you out express yourself without thinking too much about what you want to say or how to say it. For example, if you want to express your idea, you can always go with like in my view. In my view, I believe is a great phrase that you can start off a sentence with, and it also signifies the fact that it also signals that hey, express your own view, express your view. Your view matters. Or when you're responding to something, it is of paramount. I believe it is of paramount importance to exactly make it clear if you agree or disagree with a point of view. In many countries, including the Middle East, it is okay to agree and disagree at the same time, which is in the IELTS not that accepted because it makes like no sense that you agree and disagree at the same time. So there are many things that I believe can be considered cultural that they should be taught, I believe. And there are also a few things that by trial and error, candidates themselves can comprehend. And that's all about it. Linking words can also be of tremendous help. I believe teaching linking words can be an uphill battle sometimes and it can be a double-edged sword because you teach them something and then they overuse it. It is unfortunately a byproduct that you may not necessarily be a huge fan of because once you teach them, for example, to use the word on top of that, they might use it a little too many times. But I believe it is still worth teaching. Like words like not only that, on top of that, whereas, as a result, and then this is due to, because these chunks somehow they force the candidate to talk and expand on their answers. So I believe they are good as long as you also make it very clear that they should not be used too many times. These words merely and alone mean nothing, and they would do nothing unless you use them correctly in the right place and with a natural tone. So everybody, unfortunately, I gotta wrap up. Uh, I gotta take off. I really wanted to talk more, But that's it. Hope you enjoyed the show, everybody. My name is Hadi Fathi. I hope you enjoyed the show. We spoke about the IELTS, a fathomless mystery. So right now, I hope you guys feel at least a little better about the test and about teaching it. So please leave a comment whenever you're listening to this show. And also let me know what you think, if you agree, if you disagree. I still believe IELTS is just a placement test. If you don't think so, why don't you let me know why? Why don't you expand on your answer, right? So thank you very much. That was Teachers Talk Radio, Hadi Fathi, and I'm going to be counting down the seconds to meet you all and talk to you all really, really, really soon. Till then, goodbye, everybody.
You've been listening to Teachers Talk Radio. Tune in live and listen back at ttradio.org. We look forward to hearing from you next time on Teachers Talk Radio.